Final Fantasy XIV's newest expansion, Evercold, is expected to bring large changes to the game in a multitude of different ways. And perhaps one of the most notable of these changes is the removal of 2-minute raid buffs. Now, this is a topic that has recently been covered by some other larger content creators, and at this point we've been talking ourselves in circles about buff windows and their impact on the game for many years now. The dreaded 2-minute meta has grown pretty controversial for a handful of different reasons. And I think because of this, some players have grown disillusioned with the idea of raid buffing in general. In Dawntrail, many jobs in the game have access to team raid buffs that can be used to buff your party's damage. And while in the past, each buff may have had some unique quirks to it, as things are right now, every team buff in the entire game is basically a simple damage or crit increase for a set 20-second duration, all adhering to a 2-minute cooldown, hence the so-called 2-minute meta. Whereas in the past, different team raid buffs would have slightly varied mechanics and differing cooldowns to them, now they have all been changed to play functionally the same, with the expectation that each of your team's raid buffs will be applied at more or less the same time every single 2 minutes. What this means in practice is that you no longer really need to worry about the specific buff timings or quirks of the jobs in your current party. Every job will be applying their buffs at the same time in combat, no matter your team composition. This was also paired with a shift in job design, where each job's rotation was nudged to adhere to either a 1-minute or 2-minute loop. What this meant is, so long as you're clicking most of your buttons as they're coming off cooldown, your burst windows should naturally remain aligned with all of your team's raid buffs without having to put in very much extra effort. And to be fair, I will say at first, this did help me learn what each of these buffs actually did. I started raiding near the beginning of Endwalker, and this did help me to learn how to plan and play around raid buffs. But this is a very temporary problem in the grand scheme of things, and raid buffs are far from the largest barrier to entry when it comes to raid. Still, even back in Endwalker, while every raid buff was still aligned to a 2-minute cooldown, some buffs still at least had different durations to them. Most raid buffs would last for 15 seconds, while some, like Dancer's Tech Step, were 20 seconds. Because of this, it was still rewarding to be aware of each raid buff's duration, as the longer a raid buff was, obviously the more time you have to fit in more and more damage. But in Dawntrail, they decided to double down on this design even further, pushing every single raid buff in the game to a set 20-second duration, which meant that now, nearly every single raid buff in the game is applied and played around in functionally the same way. And this was kind of the final nail in the coffin that solidified the 2-minute meta we have now. Pairing this with even further adjustments to jobs to adhere all of their rotations to either 1 or 2-minute cycles, and yeah, it's kind of at its worst right now. Now, this is not to say that there's no room for decision making in players' rotations, or that every job is playing the exact same now, because again, that is definitely still not true. I think generally speaking, the fight design in Dawntrail has catered pretty well to letting players make small adjustments in their rotation to keep uptime and allow them to express their skill and understanding of a certain fight. It's been a big improvement over Endwalker raids at the very least. We've had a handful of fights this expansion that really allow melees, for example, to push themselves and show you just how good they are at actually keeping uptime. The Tyrant is probably the most notable recent example of this. The skill expression comes from being able to make these small adjustments to your rotation while still staying aligned with the buffs your team will be applying. The 2-minute meta doesn't remove this, it just makes it more static. And the 2-minute meta doesn't necessarily give our optimization a quote-unquote lower skill ceiling either. In fact, playing under these buffs properly can actually still be really strict, and a lot of the time it is. But the vast majority of us are not playing under raid buffs optimally in the first place. That's not actually most players' primary concern here. Most of our feedback comes in seeing that every raid buff comes out at the same time, and the feeling that we're all kinda just doing the same thing. Even if mechanically that's not really the case, it still kind of feels that way. When everything comes up and happens around the same 1 or 2 minute loops, we feel that. When buffs come up every 1, 2, or 3 minutes by comparison, it's not that it makes them significantly more complex or nuanced, it's just another thing that helps to give different jobs a different flow or feeling to them. and this matters a lot more to us than we tend to give credit. As much as we may at times choose to believe otherwise, we are creatures largely guided by emotion and feeling. Game balance as a concept is all relative to our perception and how we feel about the game. How we view or perceive an action can change our entire perspective on it as a whole, and to a lot of us, the 2-minute meta that we have makes us feel as if we're not engaging or playing with our team buffs as a whole. It feels like we're all just kind of doing our own thing, and that everybody's cooldowns just happen to magically line up with each other. We're no longer planning or considering what buffs we might have on our team. We're not making accommodations in our rotation to support them. And to many of us, that makes these 2-minute buffs feel less engaging. It's not that we aren't making these rotation adjustments in general, but the focus has shifted away from paying attention to your team's buffs, and I think a lot of us kind of miss that. Now, I'm basically just one step away here from going on a complete side tangent about job identity and job design. I've had to rewrite the script a handful of times now to make sure I'm actually staying focused on the 2 minutes themselves. There's still a lot that could be said about job design and job identity in this game, but I'm going to try and leave that for another time. So, focusing back on Evercold, they have stated that they will be removing 2-minute buffs from the game, meaning this will be applied retroactively for reborn jobs as well, not just for the evolved jobs. We don't have a lot of specifics to go off of at this point, so all we can really do is speculate for now. It's a bit unclear if they truly mean all raid buffs will be gone, but if nothing else, we can probably expect a large majority of them to be removed. Raid buffs have been pretty complicated to balance for a long while now. Jobs that provide team buffs are usually viewed as stronger or better for a team at higher levels of play, and that meta-perception can warp people's view of the job at nearly all levels, even when it's really not applicable. And if I'm being honest, I think it's weird that the majority of jobs in this game even have a raid buff. It's pretty silly to me that for almost its entire lifespan, Samurai has been the only melee DPS without one. And so many of the raid buffs in the game honestly just feel pretty tacked on to a lot of job kits. Things like Brotherhood, Battle Litany, Searing Light are just kind of there, and don't really interact much with the jobs they're on. You kinda just happen to have a raid buff. And to be fair, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Like, Dragoon kind of just has had Battle Litany, and that's fine. But the problem is, they keep adding new jobs with raid buffs, or just add new ones to existing jobs that previously didn't have any. It's ultimately a question of design, and as such, we need to ask ourselves, do we really feel like these jobs need to have raid buffs? Is it actually a worthwhile part of their design, or is it just kind of there to be there? With regards to jobs like Dancer and Astrologian, a core part of their identity is team buffing. And even if you can argue that in this day and age the cycle of team buffing has become pretty dull and uninspired by designing them around the set 2-minute meta, I mean, it's still pretty clearly what these jobs were designed to do. And I honestly don't think that should be removed. Some players just like giving damage buffs to their team. Giving your team damage buffs is a different way of supporting them than providing healing or shields or mitigation, and that's important enough to warrant keeping in my opinion. I don't raid as it very often, but I like playing Dancer. I like giving one of my friends dance partner and buffing their damage with Tech Step and Devilman at the right time. I don't really care that I'm doing it every 2 minutes like every other job is now. Dancer has always been doing this, even before the 2-minute meta was really being enforced. Other jobs have just been designed to stay in line with what Dancer was already doing. And I think it would be a shame for Dancer to lose that, because that's the core of what Dancer's identity is. Same with Astrologian and how its cards work. But Astrologian has suffered through rework after rework as the design team has struggled again and again trying to make its kit conform with the rest of the jobs in the game. It's difficult for me to imagine these jobs existing without having any team buffs. It would be a huge shift in their job identity, and at least for the reborn modes, that sounds like the complete opposite of what they're trying to do. So I think it's probably fair to say we might not be seeing literally all of these buffs removed from the game. For some jobs, that's actually just what they do. Team buffing is still a unique way to support your party in a way that's different from healing or providing mitigation. It's something that feels different, and personally, I like that feeling more than the feeling of healing or mitigating. And I know some people might make the argument that, well, if raid buffs exist, then players are always going to play the jobs with raid buffs, and the ones without will be considered less viable, and changes will have to be made to keep them in line with the buff jobs, and eventually we'll just end up in the same 2-minute meta anyways. Let me be clear. I don't enjoy the 2-minute meta, and I am happy that they are going to be removing raid buffs from the game. I have been wanting this for a long time now. But I don't believe that we got to the point that we're at now simply because of raid buffs existing in the game. These were intentional design shifts made by the team slowly over a long period of time spanning many different expansions. Team buffing has been in the game pretty much since the beginning, and the job design and fight design has changed a ton over the years. I'm just not buying into this argument that one raid buff existing will inevitably break the balance of the entire game. Hell, even now with the so-called 2-minute meta at its worst, some of the most popular jobs in the game for Savage content don't even have any. White Mage, Sage, Black Mage, Viper, even Samurai are some of the most played jobs in the game, and none of them have any raid buffs to speak of. Do I think the focus should be nudged away from them? Yes, absolutely. But I think they can also exist without being such a big focus in a raid. Raid buff timings don't need to define how all other jobs play. We can design them differently and move focus elsewhere, like on the actual encounters themselves. The reason we got to this point in the first place is because of compounding player complaints and issues that have grown and changed over the years. It's not that raid buffing is fundamentally impossible to balance, and even then, in the vast majority of parties, raid buffing is nowhere near as strong as many players seem to believe they are. They only truly shine in extremely high-level groups where every single player is optimizing and bursting extremely efficiently, and that is far from the norm. So I guess at this point, my stance is, I hope that some team buffs or raid buffs still exist, just only for the jobs that are properly designed around them. I am very pleased to hear that they are trying something new, and I am more than happy to see the vast majority of them removed. And honestly, if it comes to it, at least for now, I would rather try playing the game with absolutely no buffs than continuing as things are. I'm willing to hear them out. It's also worth restating that we still don't have a lot of information yet. And it's fully possible, and dare I say likely, that some team buffs will remain. Any concerns that I have are honestly pretty small, and like many other people I'm sure, I'm very excited that they're willing to make a change like this in the first place. And I hope that they'll refine and focus their design goals moving forward to prevent us from falling into the same 2-minute cycle again in the future. The rougher edges will be smoothed out eventually, and we'll possibly find ourselves in the same situation again much later down the line. But at least for the near future, we'll hopefully have a fun, fresh, and unique metagame, with the balance thrown all out of whack, and a ton of new jobs, interactions, and synergies to mess around with and try. And to me, that sounds like fun. Ultimately, some form of meta will eventually show itself after Evercold releases, and players have time to practice and learn all the new jobs, combos, and synergies. And some players will just like it less than the 2-minute meta we have now. But I think it's important here to recognize and understand that this is a big undertaking for the development team. Things are going to be messy, and a lot of it just isn't going to stick. It's important for us as players to be aware of this and keep an open mind as we wait for them to polish the rough edges and make changes over time. There will be growing pains for sure, but things won't be like this forever, as they change and refine their vision over time. And personally, I don't really care what the meta's gonna end up looking like anyways, because I'm just gonna play what I want to regardless. Even if a job that I end up liking is considered less favorable, I don't really care. I like playing what I like and finding ways to make it work, and there's been absolutely zero instances in my entire raiding career where any job has been so fundamentally bad that it was completely unviable in raid. They have clearly demonstrated over the years that they want you to be able to play any job in any piece of content and still be able to clear. So even if anything is out of tune or some jobs feel underwhelming or weak, they will be making changes to ensure all players can play what they like. I'm still very excited to see what they have in store. I'm glad 2 minutes are being removed and that jobs are being redesigned accordingly. I'm excited to see what they'll add in their place, and I think it'll be a lot of fun learning and trying out everything new once the expansion actually drops. More so than it being good or bad game design, I think the biggest issue with the 2-minute meta is that it's grown stale. We've been playing with these same rotation fundamentals for the last handful of expansions now, and I think it's time for a change. As of now, we can't say for certain as to what kinds of impacts this will have on the game. But, as a wise content creator once said on the internet, the most fun part of a game is just figuring things out. And with Evercold, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.